Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 500 of Constructed Criticism. I'm your host, Easy, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Abe Stein.
That's me.
And the birthday boy, Mason Clark. What's up, Mason?
It's me, Mason.
Mason, do you remember when I was not believing of your age for so long?
Yeah, you thought I was like super young and a different person. You thought I was like a fake account.
Dude, that's true. That's a deep cut, though. I was
Yeah.
First, I didn't believe you were real. Then I didn't believe your age, and now you're like all grown up with a beard. You know, a pro Magic player, according to Magic Online Twitter.
Oh, do you think I'm not a pro Magic player?
Yeah, I mean, I think you are.
Well, that's all that matters in my heart.
Well, there you go. I'm glad to know.
What's your income from tournaments this year, Mason?
Does commentary count?
Including, yeah, I was going to say including.
No, that would make you a Magic commentator, would it not, Mason?
Who's to say? Like labels are so 2020. I'm all about like I am a Magic fluid. You know, there's so much to me.
It's also March.
Yeah.
So you know,
the pandemic.
Not that long in the year.
It's just Mason's vibes.
Mason is vibes. Well, we are going to be talking about some vibes and some good vibes today, as we're going to talk about the importance of celebration for our training grounds today. Before we do that, though, the point of the show is to be always improving. We always want to be doing what we can to be better today than we were tomorrow, and it's a life philosophy. It's something that we aspire to be and to show on the show every week. I was out last week because I was dying. And so I'm going to go first this week. And I had a couple of always improving moments, but I want to talk about one specifically that was a pretty egregious misplay. I played in the elimination rounds. I lost in the first round of a single elim RCQ this weekend to Patty B. Shout out. And we were playing a blue-white mirror. And it's actually the first blue-white mirror that I lost RCQs and Arena combined. And there was a play that I had where I had a memory deluge resolved, and I was able to put, because of the context of the game, was able to put No More Lies and Wandering Emperor into my hand, and then cast Wandering Emperor with leaving No More Lies up the next turn. And I just brain farted and let a spell resolve into the No More Lies just for no reason. And you know, there's it's really easy for me to like blame the fact that I was playing on painkillers just due to the pain that I'm in. But I also thought about times where I've done this in the past, playing these control decks where I play too fast, where I'm like immediately agreeing to things and not taking the time to contextualize the things that are happening. And I think that the autopilot mode that I've talked about that Arena kind of puts me into in paper is really coming back right now, and something that I had worked hard a few months ago to get rid of. I was playing more, burning more Magic Online, thinking through things more, a little bit more, and kind of just taking a step back and realizing, okay, if this is happening again, like what can I do to shake things up? And so this week I'm actually going to play an aggressive deck instead of blue-white, which I still think is the best deck at the upcoming RCQ, just to force myself into newer situations where I can't autopilot as much and where the deck is a lot harder to play. And kind of that immediate shift of, okay, like what can you do to kind of reset? What can you do to kind of change perspective to force yourself into uncomfortable situations again? It's something that I used to do a lot, and something that I'm kind of excited about doing this weekend.
Yeah, I think that's really good to have like some time to like shift it, and obviously like there are lots of ways to that too. So if you're someone listening, don't feel like you have to like do it at an RCQ, right? Like Spencer gets lots of RCQs in Utah, so it's like a benefit of his. But like, yeah, I think taking time and like you even committing that much to it is a really great like sign that is a thing you actually want to do, and not something you're just like thinking you want to do. I'm like, oh, I should work on that. That makes sense. You kick the can down the road.
Yeah, I did a video once talking about like it's on the YouTube channel, the series of like how to improve Magic the Gathering. And I don't know if I've talked about this in the podcast before. Since then, but one of the things that I talked about is like once you can say that you want to be a better Magic player, right? you can say that's a thing that you want to do. And I talk about this a lot in coaching, but the actual taking action is the thing that then means that that you've followed through on a commitment to something. And so for me, I'm going to play Gruul Prowess this weekend, just to be clear. And I think that making a mental effort of okay, every single decision in this deck matters a lot because you're eking out points, and forcing myself into that situation means, okay, I've now shown, like Mason said, that I care about this thing that I'm currently struggling with. Now let's attack it. So
yeah, I think it's great and just important to take the time to, like you said, take the actual action, and doing something like reframing your perspective or putting yourself into a different position in the format just to shake your brain up and settle off the dust that you get into in patterns and stuff when you've played a lot of hours of a deck is just, I think it's a good thing to do, even if it's just as part of your testing process. Like Mason was saying, it doesn't have to be at your RSQ level. It can just be hey, let me put down playing my 50th match of Standard this month. Let me play, it could even be let me play 2 matches, a cube draft, or let me play an entirely different deck or an entirely different format, just to get your brain thinking about something else before you come back to it.
Mason, what about you? What is your always improving conversation this week?
Yeah, my always improving moment comes from something I kind of did a little bit ago, but wanted to circle back and talk about it now. And that was when the Rainbow Rhinos deck came out. There was part of me that really wanted to buy and get these ley lines. I thought it was really strong, and I would went to my LGS and the price had already gone up or whatever, and I was okay. And then I kind of just thought about it before I made an order, and I was do I even really want to play this deck? I don't have any real tournaments that matter for getting to the Pro Tour for 6 months, and if this is the case, there'll be a bunch of packs open of this set, right? So it probably won't go up much, it'll probably go down, and I just don't need to have this card. And a thing that kind of happens a lot is Magic cards are tax deductible for me, so it's really easy for me just to be oh, I should just get this card because I want to play with it, and I want to have access to all the stuff because I like having access to all the cards. And so it's super easy just to be oh, $90 or whatever for 4 ley lines, sure, let's do it. And and I'll maybe play them maybe one time. I own the Rhinos deck, I've never played it in paper. So it's just an example of not needing something and just being wait, I don't really want to do this. I don't think I would do it unless it was a Pro Tour anyways. And if I decide that changes, then I'll just do it later. But I don't need to FOMO buy this thing. And so I just instead didn't. And regardless of today's ban, today's ban is what makes you bring this back up? I almost did this in Always Improving Moment a few weeks ago. But it just was very nice to be oh yeah, I'm not going to actually engage like that. I don't need to always be on having every little thing. And I think players often also feel if they don't have the most cutting edge thing, they're just dead money or whatever. And I don't think that's true. So I kind of wanted to say that as well. I don't know. So that's not always a pretty moment. Don't get FOMO'd.
Yeah, I also think that a lot of people have a dead cost fallacy problem when it comes to stuff like this, where you said, I already own Rhinos, so what is it to buy these ley lines, right? But it's not regular Teamer Rhinos wasn't playable in that time. Abe, what about you?
Yeah, so my always improving this week is still kind of in the vein of how I'm using my time, really resting and recuperating from going so hard for the RC into the PT stretch. And that has been just kind of thinking about how to approach my process in a way that's really slowed down. I found myself kind of reflecting on how things have been up to the PT, and especially since really the RC the RCQ system and the RC has become the way that we engage with Magic, and especially with how tight the windows are. I found myself feeling when I'm playing and practicing or preparing for an event, I'm not taking as much time to just reflect on what I'm doing, and especially after reading the book I talked about a few episodes ago, How to Do Nothing, thinking about my relationship with my attention and how powerful my attention can be if I harvest it. I have been thinking of how can I use and build into my current process, and even in future processes, ways to give more attention to how I'm not only like how I'm making my deck building decisions or even my deck choices for weekends, but also like how am I reflecting on that and how am I, using the information I'm getting and paying attention to that in game to improve. And so that's just been kind of like something I've been reflecting on and thinking about how do I, am I going to update a list of questions that I have that like I want to make sure that I'm asking myself in the game? Like, do I want to take time to prepare for my tournament by preparing those? Do I want to just do more things that encourage me to harness my attention and use it in ways that are intentional? But still just kind of like figuring that out. It's been really, really nice to have and feel like I'm making a lot of the opportunity I have right now of like being qualified for the RC and also having just come back from like everything and just like unplug and reflect. I feel like a lot of the time with the cycle of things, players don't get the chance to do that, and that can be really, really harmful to your process.
That is going to do it for Always Improving. Leave a YouTube comment. Let us know what your Always Improving moment was this week. We love to hear about them. And then if you want to support the show directly, you can join David in doing so. David went over to patreon.com/ccmtg, became a patron of the show, gets access to the Discord, gets access to the Patreon question, tons of awesome stuff. So head on, if you want to support the show directly, it'll always be free, but patreon.com/ccmtg, just like David did, would be greatly, greatly appreciated. Let's do some housekeeping really quick. Just, so there's some other ways to support the show. You can go over to Heavy Play, use the code CCMTG to get 10% at checkout. Heavy Play makes some of the coolest playmats you ever did see. It was really funny. Somebody had like the whole Heavy Play kit this week. And that somebody sent me a picture of. They're like, they got the deck, the box, the whole shebang. And I was like, man, it's really cool to like have a product that is so unique in the space. So check out Heavy Play. They really are unique in the space and innovative. And I think that just as somebody that has worked at a bunch of startups, it's really cool to see them pushing the boundaries of this thing that seems like, it's just sleeves and deck boxes and playmats, but they really are trying, and I really love them for that. So, and then Untapped GG is our other sponsor. We're an affiliate of them. If you click the link in the show notes, every person that signs up, gives us a kickback, and it really helps out. My Untapped GG wasn't working today, and I was really frustrated, and I was like, what is going on? And I realized that I had to restart my client to update it, and I was losing percentage points because of it, Abe. Losing percentage points without my Untapped GG. So I personally like they're amazing. I use them every single day and could be happy with them. All right, that's it for the sponsors. Let's talk really quickly before we get into our main topic about the BNR announcement. Mason, what happened?
So in Modern, Violent Outburst was banned, and in Vintage they unrestricted Ponder. So I don't know, go look at the 5 Vintage players for that stuff. But in Modern, it's pretty big because I think what the goal is, it is to like nerf the Cascade decks, but not kill them. Those decks still have cards like Ardent Plea and Demonic Dread for 3-mana Cascaders. And they kind of mentioned this as well, that basically Rhinos was a deck, and Living In, also was doing very well, but not really called out in the article, as decks that were like performing super well, and hitting around Outburst really helps change the play pattern, which is pretty big. Abe was talking about it before the show, and I'll have him go into a second here, but the end of turn Violent Outburst into another Cascader was really punishing. And so your Rhino card still exists. They might look a little different now, but it's just going to be a different type of deck, and maybe change some of the cards up would be kind of cool. So, Abe, what do you think about that? I know I mentioned this a second ago, the end of turn stuff, but what are your overall thoughts?
Candidly, I think the ban makes sense for the goals they want to accomplish, but I really do not agree with the goals that they've set for the format, what it is they want to accomplish, and I just haven't felt like I've agreed on what would make the format better or more playable in a few months. And so, I don't know, this feels like another step forward in just accepting a lot of like principles about the way the format is that I don't particularly like, or I don't think lead to fun gameplay. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Ban Violent Outburst, I think it, like, I think it does make sense. There has not been a deck that has played Violent Outburst that has had extremely fun play patterns for both players. I think that, like, you can think back even to, like, they had to change the rules around Cascade to avoid you, like, Cascade Tibblething when Modern was as broken as it could ever be. They had to, now ultimately ban it, but, like, Rhinos, Living End, all these things where just cascading instant speed is, kind of game-breaking with these other cards. Yeah, there's just no one's casting Violent Outburst to do anything fair or fun, really, and so that's fine. I'm not certain that this is going to do anything very productive for the format in terms of, like, how fun it is to play. And, like, I think if I were to make a ban this close to Modern Horizons 3 release, considering the competitive cycle of things, I don't know, I probably would have wanted to target something that felt like it made the format more fun, but that's just kind of my thoughts on it. I do think that Violent Outburst is the best card for the Cascade decks. I think that without it, the Cascade decks are entirely different in shape and scope. And, like, while having a bunch of pitch spells to go with your Rhinos, or, like, I guess maybe Living Ending at sorcery speed, although that was, like, never really all that powerful, like, those things can still happen. I think that, force negation for your thing on your turn and still having, like, Shardless Agent into Rhinos or Plea into Rhinos is going to be, like, a pretty prevalent play pattern for those decks. I think the decks that play the pitch elementals and pitch spells, like, you need to do that to keep up. And so it'll be interesting to see how those decks kind of reshape themselves, but the days of, okay, I'm passing into my opponent's 3 mana, and they could either Tidebinder my play, or Violent Outburst make Rhinos, or just hardcast Force Negation, or, Dead Gone, and, fire it, like, ice my land, untap, do the thing, is just, that is done. I think it's good to eliminate an instant speed threat of that magnitude from the format, but I just don't know that it does anything productive for the format at large.
Yeah, I don't know. This is not what I thought was going to happen. Like, I was texting my friends, and I was pretty sure that Treasure Cruise was getting banned in Pioneer just based on, like, numbers. And I don't know. It's weird because, like, I don't know that Modern was in the best place, but kind of like Abe, I don't know if this, like, fixes any problems that anyone has other than Mikey Hopkins with Modern. Like,
I wasn't even certain we were going to talk about Pioneer just yet, but I got plenty to say on Pioneer when you're done talking about it.
There you go. Sorry.
No. I just think that, like, I like what Abe said about, like, yeah, the instant speed 8/8 is probably, or 8/8 is probably too strong. Like, okay, but I just don't think it scratches the problem that it's so weird, because I think that Modern was really beloved before Lord of the Rings, and then has slowly become people's, like, least favorite format somehow. And I just don't know how you, like, kill your golden child like this. It seems weird to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't say this if I thought I was going to get in trouble, so hopefully I don't get any DMs from people at Wizards. Violent Outburst is, like, also a card that creates some, like, design problems. Like, so Lelia has been announced to be in Modern Horizons 3, so I can finally talk about this. So, like, one thing that maybe players don't know is that Lelia counts each cascade. So, like, when I was testing for Modern Horizons 3, a thing I tried was Lelia and Rhinos, but I also just tried Lelia plus Outburst. So, like, if I attacked and you no-blocked, I just had no other zeros in my deck. I cascade through everything. Lelia is infinitely large. You lose the game. And, not really commenting on that power level, but it did, like, create problems with designing cards, too. And personally, I was like, I can't believe we have to, like, live in a world. Like, there are a couple cards like this where I'm just like, wow, I can't believe we keep designing on these cards that I don't think make the format net fun, when I was there. I don't really want to comment on some of those cards because I'm afraid that, like, it could maybe speculate on cards that are good or something like that. But, like, which I think would be ridiculous, but people do ridiculous things, so I'll just say that real quick. But yeah, I just think Violent Outburst doesn't add a ton of fun, and I think that like the like flashy gameplay of like holding for mana and stuff should probably not be so tied to so much raw power as well. So I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I guess I'll sorry, I wanted to say that real quick. It's just like it does do weird things, and just in general, candidly, I cannot believe there have been bans before Modern Horizons 3. I really thought we were just going to buckle down and be like,
I thought it was Pioneer. I was sure it was Pioneer because of this.
I was pretty sure it was Treasure Cruise and Outburst, personally. That's what I thought it was. Because I thought Outburst has been a problem, I mean, for, like I said, 2 years now or whatever, right? But yeah, I want to throw it to you guys before I talk about Treasure Cruise. So I guess I'll throw it to Spencer because you brought it up. So you think Treasure Cruise should go in Pioneer?
Well, yeah. So I've been playing a lot of Explorer specifically when I like need to break from Standard, and that is one of the decks that's like really, really popular on Arena. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Like, you know, there's some decks that I'm like surprised are not as popular. Like Amalia combo, for example, is like pretty easy to build on Arena, and like has basically everything. But Phoenix, I don't think that I have ever, until I played against the deck a ton, I don't think I ever realized that like how demoralizing just casting Treasure Cruise can be on the other side of the table. Like, you'd think that, like, what are you talking about, Spencer? Like, you play this card with fetch lands, like, you should know this. But being the only deck that really gets to play a card has, I think, a pretty big impact. Like, it's not the Treasure Cruise, Treasure Cruise format because only one deck gets to play it. It'd be different if it was like, you know, there are like 6 blue decks that get to play Treasure Cruise, right? You know, and that's just not the case. And man, do you want to like slam your head against the table after you've like ran your opponent out of resources and they just like top deck a Treasure Cruise and you're like, all right, well, that was a fun game. Abe has something he wants to say. He looks mad. You okay, man?
I am mad about Pioneer, and I have been for years. And this falls in line with the same things I hate about the format curation of Pioneer back when they banned Inverter and back when they let Karn run loose in the format for as long as they have, because the idea that Wizards has for what is acceptable and what matters in Pioneer is now, according to what I've seen, the following things. Pioneer is the format where Treasure Cruise gets to be legal because we banned fetch lands. Fetch lands were the problem. Treasure Cruise is a good design. Karn, acceptable design to have because, it's cool with the artifacts. You can go get things that are wishboard. That's too much of a cost. Both of these things are fundamentally wrong. You can't just balance the format around Lotus Field being like... they literally bent the rules backwards to make a card that doesn't make sense as printed. To just say, no, but trust me, like... No cap, you can Buzz Crusher a Lotus Field. Just trust. Just read it and be like, yeah, I want that one, and you can do it.
That's not why they did that, right? They did it so that it didn't...
They literally made that card so they could keep Lotus Field in the format with counterplay. Guaranteed.
Yeah. I thought they said that it did that so it didn't commit a crime.
No. It was designed to beat Lotus Field.
All right. Well,
yeah. I mean,
at the end of it,
it doesn't commit a crime, to be fair. Like, that is true. Like that might have been.
It might be both, but they were like, "How do we make a card? Like, we need this to hurt Lotus Field for balance reasons. Let us just word it in this way and like work the rules out." In the aftermath.
I think for what it's worth, Lotus Field is also just like total nonsensical to have in the format the way it is. Right now. It
just feels like Pioneer was handed to like whatever the committee of people on the inside that decide what the identity of Pioneer is have decided a few things about the identity of Pioneer. You can cast Treasure Cruise, you can cast Dig Through Time, because the clear reason those cards are wrong in their minds, likely as people who designed them, are that they were okay, just not with fetch lands. So now we live in a world where you can cast a million cantrips, always find the things you need, continually bring back Arclight Phoenixes or stack a big Kraken Drake or whatever, but like constantly have access to the card you need because you're spending all of your mana every turn digging through for it, while also accruing other, like, you know, Iota's Advantage. So you can also play Treasure Cruise, and that's just okay. And despite overwhelming data at the Pro Tour level that this deck is the best deck in Pioneer, we're going to let it sit because no one's playing Pioneer. But Modern, a format where it has like nothing coming up except for a major release, the most major release of like every 3 years for the format is coming up, and we decide we can make a change, but Pioneer has to stay the same. It just very much frustrates me because I feel like the things that I see as being clutched to as the identity of the format do not align with what is a fun or good play experience, and continually pushes out things that are.
It is interesting to me, the ban announcement with what happened in December, because in December, Dan mentioned how we're going to take a much more hands-on approach to Pioneer. And had they not said that, I would be right now like, Abe, listen, I understand what you're saying, but the Pro Tour just happened and there wasn't enough time. A lot of players probably bought decks. Pioneer season starts in a month. They probably just want to make sure before they like nuke a deck. They've shown that they want to take time. But then they said they want to take more hands-on. So, like, I'm personally have this weird thing where it's like, if they never said those words, that would be, I'd honestly believe that. I'd be like, I get you, Abe, but like, if it's still like this in 6 months, I'm kind of more on your side than I am theirs right now, right? But we got to give it time. So I don't understand, because the win rate data is very much in favor of Treasure, like the Phoenix deck. Like, my understanding is it was like historically high, not like the highest of all time, but like it was the most played deck with one of the best win rates in Pro Tour history. And it's not like anyone went to the Pro Tour and was surprised. You tested for that Pro Tour. True or false, y'all thought Phoenix was a good deck. You know,
yeah,
like, I mean, some of your teammates put Axelzots in their main deck for it. You know, like they were trying to beat it. So like, you know, it is weird to me. I will say, I personally think one of the things, and I don't know this to be true, but I think that I feel like it's happening, is that they're kind of saying like Pioneer gets to be this home of Modern and how people remember it, and they want to protect things, right? So like Lotus Field is like the last ritual deck in Magic that isn't like Legacy Vintage cost restrictive, you know? Like that is the last one of those. And Phoenix was like a beloved deck of old and Modern that kind of, you know, went the way of the Dodo and died off with Faith the Soothing Band. So like it is just weird what is going on in Pioneer. I hate playing Phoenix. I played a lot of qualify for the Pro Tour with it. I thought I was playing just to jam my head with Amalia into this and call it a day, but like, you know, it is so weird to just see this. And, you know, it also feels like I just mentioned how it's so close to the BNR. I'm sorry, with the BNR and the new season announcement, but like there's a month and like a lot of people are like, you know, part of my job in coaching is talking to people, and a lot of them are right now trying to pick their deck for the season. And so it feels like there is some amount of like, no matter what, you always lose someone's deck, but like, I don't know, maybe just hit Treasure Cruise and call it a day. I don't know. It's weird. Treasure Cruise.
I also want to clarify now that I've let out the frustration, I want to clarify a couple of things. One is that at the time of this recording, I have not heard Dan and Blake get on stream and talk about the content and answer questions about the announcement. I am certain that I will warm up to a reasoned and explained, you know, I'm sure that the cards on their radar, I'm sure there is reason behind why they did or did not make a decision about it for this BNR. I'm willing to listen. Secondly, I want to say that my frustration around things like Lotus Field really comes from, like, even your point, Mason, I have no problem with Lotus Field existing. My problem is when they kind of set Lotus Field as, like, the only representation or the allowed representation of, like, do a thing, win the game combo, as they kind of stated things were going to be when they banned Walking Ballista and when they banned Inverter. Those things, in conjunction with what you're saying about Lotus Field, is like, sure, people can now play like Hidden Strings' Dark Ritual and like play a real Stormy combo deck, and that does have value to me, but like, I don't know. At what point do we like let things, like, are we just okay with there being a deck that is really repetitive, constantly putting up numbers, a known quantity, and now at this point the real only, like, a pretty solved, like, you know, 70 of 75 cards or whatever that you should play in just about every Pioneer event if you want to win? If that deck is something that people liked playing at one point or like have fond memories of, because like it is, or can we allow more of those back into the format? Like, is Inverter really too good or like I would love to know the numbers comparison between Inverter and Arclight Phoenix, and really that's all I'm going to say. Because as someone who likes and is fine with decks that are doing the same thing all the time, like when the play is fun or the games are interesting to navigate, and I know some people love playing their Izzet decks, their Steam Vents Truthers, like at the same time, it feels ridiculous to just kind of like let these kind of numbers fly without continuing to curate around this and rein that in, or let it loose in the other ends. And that's kind of just my...
I just want to say one last thing, and then I think we should move on. But I just think of all the Heliod decks that get to see play because they banned Walking Ballista, Abe, and like that wouldn't have happened if they had banned Heliod instead.
Yeah, all the Heliods that people play, the one maybe in their Amalia deck.
Yeah.
But the Amalia deck's cool.
Yeah. Let's talk about something that should give us good feelings, and that's the importance of celebration. And it is not lost on us that we're just like doing a pretty normal episode of constructive criticism for episode 500. And I want to give it behind the scenes because I think it's funny. Like, I don't know, 2.5 weeks ago, Mason texted me, Spencer, what do you want to do for episode 500? And I was like, just shut it down. Like, this is it. This is the end of the podcast. And Mason's like, yeah, I think we just say up like Pog and like, move on. And I said this during our podcast meeting, and I haven't even said it to Mason in the text, where it's like, we're doing this series with all of the former ghosts that we can get, doing these celebration episodes. We're doing, it is almost impossible to talk about like what is it's going to be like what almost 8 years of Mason's life, 10 years of my life, 2 years of Abe's life, and like I don't know, you just don't do a lot of things for that long in life. And so when kind of talking about like, okay, well, what do we actually want to do? I thought about the work that I've done in the space of recognition and in the space of celebration. And I wanted to just talk about how that might apply to Magic and how that applies to life and the things that we can do to be happier. And especially when it comes to a game like Magic that can be really frustrating, sometimes you take those moments to celebrate, and it can be really important. And I found a quote from a Wellbeing magazine website really now. It says, the overall life satisfactions and feeling of self-worth are created from moments of noticing and appreciating positive experiences. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but I spent 5 years working in what is called the recognition space for workplace, where we worked on peer-to-peer recognition in the workplace and celebrating people's work accomplishments, their years of service in the workplace. And the company that I worked for is the leader in the space. They invented the space, and they did that through a lot of market research and understanding of like how important it is to feel satisfaction on something that you spend as much time as you do as work, through celebrating accomplishments, through celebrating years of service and things like that. And they're like literally the head of marketing has written multiple books on it. The multiple peer-reviewed papers coming from different departments on the subject. And I thought about Magic, right? And like, I just talked about how Mason spent almost 8 years of his life on this podcast. Now I've spent over 10 years. Abe's now spent multiple years. And I think that one of the really cool things that we get to see is some of my favorite Magic moments are moments of celebration from I think about Kane getting top 8 at the Pro Tour, and the celebration that ensued. I think of Mason and friends running up to Autumn. I think of Seth tearing up and I think celebration is a huge part of this, and I just wanted to take a moment to talk about our thoughts on it. So, with that being said, there also has historically in the PTQ era been kind of a yucky, it's too cool for school feeling that I wanted to address on the podcast, Abe. And as the resident boomer, I wanted you to kind of talk about like what was up with the years of no, act like you've been there before, don't celebrate anything. What was that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this still exists, and especially in a lot of people who, like myself included at times, people who like are pushing themselves and pushing themselves and pushing themselves to achieve, especially in a space like Magic, to get up to the next level. And I'm sure a lot of even like, you, the listener at home, might relate to this too, of like when you like maybe get that PTQ top 8 or get your first qualification, of course, but like, even get that top 8 or have that win in, or, maybe at your local level, like win that IQ, or, that these days, like top 8, another RCQ, or, make the finals of another RCQ and lose. There's this feeling of like, by the time you win, like you should, like, your head and you're like, you need to be focused on just the next thing, right? Like if you're still feeling good about qualifying for whatever it is you're working towards, or succeeding whatever it is you've put the time into, like you did all of that to succeed at this next thing. So why are you celebrating this thing when the goal is really the next thing down the line, right? It's like, okay, why am I celebrating that I'm in top 8 when really I want to win the PTQ? Why am I celebrating that I was in position to top 8 when really the goal was to top 8? Why am I celebrating X when really it's the next thing? And that keeps the carrot on the stick, and that keeps you, focused one step ahead. But that also means you leave a lot of joy on the table. That's something that I've definitely experienced before. And I think that like when it's like a kind of natural, unfortunate trade-off of really pushing yourself and like demanding excellence of yourself and like really trying to achieve, is that like if you set your goals really high, even to the height of like I want to qualify for the Pro Tour, and like then it's like, well, once you're there, isn't the goal going to be to succeed? Like if it's not, when you're not at the very top goal, and even when you are, it's less and less like you should even celebrate, is kind of the pressure that's put on you. And that is definitely kind of been a long time holdover for a lot of players for quite a while. And that's something I think gets talked about a lot too, in terms of like not like being willing to and able to celebrate people's accomplishments at different levels and like where they're at as compared to necessarily just being like, oh, what does it matter that you min cashed your open, or
I think that Mason and I were talking about this a little bit, and Mason, you feel like this has gotten a lot better. That this is not a thing that's quite as bad as it was, maybe 6 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like since around the time I really got into things, it's been on the uptick for the most part, and that like people kind of just grew up. Was the best way to say it.
I like that.
Yeah, because like I like what Abe said about how like your goal is that, so like why are you doing this? But I think that is like very level 0. And I think for what's worth, I don't think Abe does this, not trying to like blast him or anything, but like level 1 is also like, yeah, my goal is still set there, but I've made the first like step on that goal. Like I'm on that path now, and I've qualified for the RC. It'll not ruin my chances to make it to the Pro Tour, to go out with my friends, or like pop off when I win, or like, be really excited about the story. Like, I feel good about like everything. Like I played a local like game day this past weekend. Well, short championship, that's what it's called, right? Had a bye round 1, mono block round 2, mono blue round 3, scoop my girlfriend round 4, mono blue in the top 4, met her in the finals. We split to go home for my birthday. It was great. I felt good about it. I won the thing or whatever. I had a good time. We were talking about stories. It's not like I played some crazy hard Magic tournament. And it was just like, it's just like at the end of the day, not even a thing. It was like $100 Dothia I won. It's like, not actually that much comparatively. So like, I just think that people get so fixated on like trying to reach the thing that they lose a lot of the joy on the way of getting there. And I think that is the part that really matters when you look back on it at the end. Like when you make it to the Pro Tour, you're going to be super excited when you make your goal. But when you look back on it in a couple of years, it's going to be the other stuff and less about that like exact moment or that time, I think, for a lot of people. So
I want to dive into what you just said, because I think that a lot of people have this experience, whether it's right now, it might be like, oh, I qualified for my first regional championship and then I flamed out, or, whatever. And I remember really vividly the work that I got to experience from other people and with other people before qualifying for my first Pro Tour. And, we talk about setting reasonable goals a lot on this podcast. And so my goal of my first Pro Tour was to day 2. Like, that's all I wanted to do. That's like, I really wanted to day 2 my first Pro Tour. Finished day 1 at 4-4, got to day 2, and was pretty miserable day 2. Ended up in a draft deck that I didn't like and stuff. And I think back on it pretty fondly still. And I wish that I had done more to... I remember, actually, it was Mike Flores came up to me. It was I was 4-1. And, he's like, dude, keep going. And we had met at the RCQ that I qualified at. And then at the end of the day, we talked, and he's like, oh man, I can't, like, that must suck that you really suck that you flamed out like that. And I really let that affect the fact that I had accomplished my goal, right? Like, you start out feeling, at 4-1, you're like, I made day 2, and it's round 6. Like, and I think that me now, I would take a moment to reflect, be like, sick. Now we're free rolling. Like, now we get to just have fun, right? And instead, I started to put different pressures on myself, and I started to adjust my goal. I started to adjust things that I didn't go into that event thinking. And I think we often do that. We often adjust on the fly in ways that maybe we don't need to. And I really like what you said, Abe, about how it leaves a lot of joy on the table. Like, I would, round 6, I played against Mark Jacobson, who I had beaten to go to this Pro Tour. And I wish that I would have been like, dude, hey, we both made it day 2. Like, I wish that had been the conversation. And I think that it's been hard for me, who was kind of raised by those Magic players that had this psyche, to overcome it for me. And I really like, Mason, that you don't feel that way. Like, you feel like people have grown up, that they've gotten through that. Sorry, that was a little bit rambly, but I know that I would do things differently in different spots in my Magic career. I could keep going, like the SEG that I drew myself into top 16 after losing an important win in for top 8. I wish I had celebrated that a little bit more. It was like my best SEG finish, stuff like that. I think too often we see what could have been rather than appreciating the success that we accomplish. And I hope that, we can be better at that. I gotta ask, I've told some of my stories. Abe, how has Celebration impacted you in Magic?
Thinking about this episode a lot for this week had me really reflect on like some of the, I don't know, like best and worst of my successes in Magic. And like, I think that like my relationship to, especially just like celebrating, is something that because I was really raised and like came up in the same era, in part because of that, and also in part because like I deal very poorly with like kind of breaking it up. Like in your situation, Spencer, my first SSG Invitational, my goal was to day 2, and I had locked it up like in the first like 5 rounds, and the same thing happens where immediately the wheels came off. I just like couldn't really, and it was like, that was when I was like 18 or 19 or something, and I was like, I just don't have the mental fortitude to like shift emotionally between like, okay, like this is awesome, and then like back to like, okay, let's play really, really tight technical Magic and like just keep on being hungry to win. You know, like that's a hard shift for me. And I think for a long time that has bled into like how I feel about, you know, successes that I've had multiple times before. Like even like these days, like when I win, I guess maybe not anymore. During the PPTQ era, and this has been a pretty big change for me over the last like 5 or 6 years of Magic. When it's PPTQs, at a certain point, it was like, okay, I'm just going to win my PPTQ for the season and then like, you know, be done with it. And it got so routine for me to like win in the first, you know, like 2 months tops, that like it would happen and be like, okay, thank God, like I'm good. Like I can like, you know, go do whatever. And that was really the end of it. But it wasn't until really taking a break and a step back and losing competitive Magic in the way that we lost it for a few years there that I like found the gratitude again of like being able to be in the position to succeed. And I remember after like for the season for Atlanta not qualifying because I didn't get a chance to take many shots, and the ones I did I just came up just short, and I was like, you know, it makes you not take for granted anymore the success that you have in Magic to not have it for so long, and then also to like come up short to the point where when I like was in the second season when I was coming down the stretch of like I'd played a bunch of RCQs, kept on losing in like high leverage situations, and I was like, you know, I know I'm good enough. It's just been a while since I've won. I was like over the moon when I won and like able to enjoy that and able to like share that with the people around me, and even like my opponent who really respected me, someone who I think might still listen to the show, and like he wanted to win too, but he was happy to see me win, and he like was happy to like have played such a good match in that situation that it was like, oh wow, like this was awesome. And when I think about all of my favorite moments from like, oh, this was awesome when in Magic, so much of it is like just the moment of sharing it, the moment of like, it's not the fact that I made the play that won the game, whatever, right? It's the fact that like after that and in the moments after that, I got to experience like sharing the joy of what I'd just done with the people around me. And like, I think the perfect example is when I qualified for the Pro Tour I just played in Dallas. Like at the table, when I had made the play that won in my green mirror, which was like casting Woodcaller Automaton for the full price and like animating a thing and making a 10-10, attacking, and it was lethal. You know, I shook hands with my opponent. I like, you know, clapped and did a fist pump, and I was like pretty excited, but that was just about it at the table. I was even like told by someone who's watching me that they were like, I thought you would like be so much more animated in that moment. And I was like, well, I still gotta sweat tiebreakers, I feel like, and like I'm not sure, so I don't really want to be like, so like, but I think I did just make it back to the Pro Tour, and we'll see. And then it was like, as soon as I found out, and then was like with my friends, and like they came back to the Airbnb, and they were like, you know, like they heard the news, they'd seen it, and they were like screaming as they ran in the door because they saw me, and we were just like jumping in like a big, you know, bro high five hug pile, and it was like that is what it's all about, right? And it's because of the fact that there were people, not only myself celebrating it, but people celebrating it with me, that really made it everything that it was, right? Like I honestly, if not for my friends there, I would have been really happy, but like I would have felt the same on the inside in either way. Like I was very, very, very proud of how I'd played, very happy with my tournament result, but like I would have gotten on my plane, shrugged a little bit, like come home, told my friends and like told my family, and been like, yeah, you know, I'm going back to the Pro Tour, it's pretty cool. And that would have been it. It would have been pretty cool. And that definitely would have left joy on the table. And it's just been a lot of really good reminders in the last few years of like that value, right? And bringing that value.
I've always said that like qualifying for the Pro Tour is cool, but like your friends qualifying for the Pro Tour is like somehow equally, if not always, cooler. It's just like, because you know you work so hard with these people, right? Like you put a lot of yourself into seeing this. I remember when Casey qualified for the Ocean Pro Tour during the podcast, and we were he he was like, Spencer, I hate every deck in Standard. I need you to teach me how to play your ramp deck. And just like green-red ramp, it was like a brew that I had won a bunch of 1Ks with. And, he won on a Magic Online at the time. He played his RCQ on Magic Online. And I remember before Top 8 started, I was like, okay, we're going to the liquor store. He was like, what are we getting? Well, I'm not drinking. I was like, no, we're going to get champagne. If you win, we're going to crack it. Then we're going to get whiskey. And if you lose, we're going to crack it. And he and I did that for years to come. And what's so funny is neither of us liked champagne back then. And we reminisce now that it always tastes like that Pro Tour invite now whenever we drink it. It reminds us of that. So, Mason, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple like big memory things. Like my first Top 8 was like a team event, and I remember there was like a weird pairing thing where the long story short is we were in the backup feature match area. STG like rushed us to get the slip, and the judge filled it out for us. Judge filled it out wrong, didn't get caught until like a round had happened, and basically got retroactively given 3 points. And so we were playing like the wrong matchup or whatever, and they're dead for Top 8, and we're playing for Top 8.
Is that
and
the
we hit
Gru Warriors one?
Yes.
Nice.
And like we hit time, and it's like turns, and I'm like, well, Teresa is our middle seat. She's playing Standard. We're trying to figure out the line to win. And I'm like, well, listen, our best bet is just to do everything we can to win. Hope these people concede. And they like shake their head, no, it's not going to concede. I go, well, they're going to, get us out of Top 8. It's fine. Let's do everything we can. And she uses the Domri minus on turn 5 of turns and like looks at like the top 4 or whatever. And we have to hit double Chain Whirler or double Haste Creature. First card, Chain Whirler. Second card, land. Third card, land. Fourth card, Chain Whirler. And she just like puts them on the table. I jump up because I have to use the bathroom and sprint across the hall because I've been holding it for the whole time to win. We end up making Top 8. That's awesome. I remember my first time qualifying for the Pro Tour. I'm at my LGS at the time. And my friend and I, Hess, are in the car. He's someone who taught me a lot about the game. We're in his car right before it, the store opens up. And he's like, honestly, man, I'm not trying to sound cocky, but I think our decks are great. And he was playing Teamer Adventures, and I was playing what would become Bant Uro, but I was the only Uro player in the room. It was week 2 of it. And I was like, yeah, man, I don't want to sound that way either, but I do think one of us is going to the Pro Tour today. And then we meet in the finals. And it's just this awesome moment of no matter what, someone's going to be super happy. And I got to beat him in a really sick line. And then I won, we fist bumped, and then we shook hands, and then we got up and we hugged, and I was like, I'm going to the Pro Tour, and I'm popping off and saying words I can't say here because of our sponsor, Heavy Play. Check out heavyplay.com. And, all that stuff's going on, and it's so sick. And, that I even my, first Pro Tour, it was, not exactly what I wanted. It was online during COVID, but, I remember when I locked day 2 of my first Pro Tour, and I was like, let's go. And, I was doing well enough. The Magic Online account tweeted me as one of the people going into day 2, and it was oh, we're doing it. And or maybe it was middle of day 2, actually, middle of day 1, excuse me. But it was that moment happening, and it was just really a great experience. And then even my Pro Tour Aldi one, that's a Pro Tour I have some regrets about because I wish I had deferred it because I worked on MH3 the whole point leading up to it and didn't really get to practice as much as I would like. And I think my results showed. But also, I won to my draft. I end up meeting some super nice people in that draft. I've queued into Magic Online since then. They're always hey, it's me from the Pro Tour. I'm oh, dang. And we talk, And I queue into Javier Dominguez at 1 and 2. Everyone 1-2s the draft. I have this sick game with Javier. Javier and I become, acquaintances. Some would say friends. I would say best friends. And we have a good conversation back and forth. And, we have a sweet match. It's really cool. And he just shows me why he's so good at the game while we're playing. And it's so awesome. And I'm 1 and 3 at the Pro Tour. I lose to Javier. No regrets. It was an awesome match. Next round, pull up my phone on MTG Melee. Paulo Vitor Dama de Rosa. Only at the Pro Tour are you 1 and 3 and your opponent's Paulo Vitor Dama de Rosa. There's no other place. And I just I get to play a sick one against PV, and just it wasn't even that good of a Pro Tour, I went 1x whatever, ended up scooping to Raja because he got paired down, and I was just yeah, I can't make day 2. Go into day 2, and so it's just there's so many great memories, and I won DreamHack Dallas, and I can remember my friend who was there rooming with me, he was playing like a side event 5K, and he was like, if you win this, I'm going to buy you a steak dinner. And I won, and like I did the interview, and I did everything, and I got up, and it was sick. And I went over, and he's mid sideboarding, and I like plopped down in the empty seat next to him, and I was going like, I said something like, yeah, I think a T-bone's what I want for dinner, but like maybe a filet mignon. I just don't know. I'm trying to figure it out, and like that was the sick moment. There are just so many moments where like I got to have these awesome memories.
That's a cool celebration, by the way. I like that one.
Yeah, it was just like all these cool moments and things that we did, and it was just, I don't know. I have so many great things like that. I could tell so many more stories, and there are even stories where like Kane and I teamed for a team event, and we end up losing, back-to-back win-and-ins, and, against our friends who use Fanatical Firebrand to kill us in Modern during Hogak era. There's just, like, so many awesome stories. And when I think back on Magic when I'm older in life, I know that I'm going to be really happy for all the memories and times, things I had like this. And, like, a core memory I have is, like, I'm playing against Abe, and I, like, make a small mistake, and Abe just looks at me and goes, your play makes no sense. I just go, I messed up. And he goes, okay, and like makes the play in his upkeep, and like he does the thing because he's like, I think you said something like, I know you're too good to, like, there has to be something. And I go like, I've messed up. And he's like, okay. And then like, I end up like beating Abe. And there's just so many stories like that. I have so many interactions and so many times with friends and people, and like rivalries with people where I could smack talk someone I don't really like, and like there's all these awesome stories. And like, I just think people who don't enjoy the ride, enjoy those moments, they're just so much less passion and joy, I think, personally. And maybe I'm projecting because they're celebrating differently than me. I don't want to do that. But, like, I don't know. Magic's awesome. Yeah. And, like, I could tell stories like this for another 20 minutes. So
we probably
we're going to stop now.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
It's so funny. I'm really glad we did this episode. I want to talk about appropriate ways and times to celebrate an MTG before we talk about episode 500. And I think that one of the things that I've said for a long time, and I talked to Mason about this quite a bit because we both watch like Melee, and like we both watch Smash, right? But there needs to be more pop-offs in Magic, and it needs to be like universally understood that it is not rude to pop off. And I'm going to use myself as an example. Like when you have to think about, Abe, you were telling the story about, or sorry, Mason, you were telling the story about the Chain Whirlers, and like it made me think of like when I played my Scryland and I saw Crater's Claws on top of my deck, and I looked at the board and I realized that I was going to the Pro Tour and had to pass the turn. And like, Abe, how long do you think that turn felt?
Oh, I mean, you're still playing that turn today.
Like, it was the longest moment of my life. Like, it was just, oh my gosh, I can't. But like, you gotta wait. You gotta wait, right? You gotta take your time. And I cast that Crater's Claws. I jumped up and just hugged the nearest human to me. Like, I turned around, saw Travis, and just did the biggest hug. He had also just qualified for the Pro Tour, and like, it's like moments like that where like Travis, I'll always remember that hug with Travis, like the first person I had an interaction with, right? And my opponent wasn't salty. If they had jumped up and like given somebody a hug, like I would have been happy for them. I think that like we need to talk about ways that are appropriate and times that are appropriate to celebrate. I had a match where a local player, Tyler, who I think might listen to the show, beat me for the first time. And I had beaten him in multiple RCQ top 8s. And we might have been playing like a stored championship or something. And he made a really sick line to beat me in game 1 and like just was like, F yeah, and like jammed the table and just like was in tears. He's like, dude, I'm so sorry. Like, I shouldn't be emotional. I was like, dude, that was a sick play. Like, I'm glad you're good. Like, you're good. And I think that if, like Mason, the kind of like that ability to like act like you've been there before, I hope that we as Magic players can find it appropriate when our opponents are happy for their success and when they're happy that they did something strong. And, we'll talk about times that aren't appropriate, but I'm kind of curious, Mason, like, what do you think are, like, appropriate times to celebrate? Times where maybe you need to, like, lean away from it.
I mean, my first thought is I think there's like a real entitlement issue in Magic, and people feel like when they lose something was taken from them, but it wasn't taken from them, which I think is like a really important, like, if you feel like something when it's taken from you, I think there's some cognitive dissonance going on, and you need to probably like check in with reality. You didn't lose something, like it wasn't taken from you, right? You lost your chance to win it, but you didn't like lose it. And you can be happy for those other people. And I think that, like, an example of times where it is bad is, like, there are moments where, like, maybe they're really emotional, like, or like something kind of like a weird judge call happened, or like they seem very distraught, or like, there's like lots of things. I think lots of people in those moments you'll kind of know. But honestly, for the most part, if you ever beat me, pop off. You ever beat me playing for the Pro Tour, at the Pro Tour, in RCQ, I want you to pop off. I want you to have a good time, Like, Lord knows I've done, like a lot after I've won something where like, wow, I can't believe I won that. Like, I've been excited or happy or like, I sacrificed a bat. I talked about the other day at Ob Nixilis, someone where I just like reasoning through that with myself was so hard. And, like maybe that's like, some people might do that as DM, but I think a lot of it matters with your intent and what you're going for, and just trying to be the most authentic, positive forward person you can be. And positive forward does not mean you have to neglect yourself and your own emotions. It just means you're trying to do what feels right. And if it feels right to pop off, I think that's fine. I think it's different if your opponent's like maybe crying or something like that. But like for the most part, I think it's other people's faults, not yours. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty simple. I believe that the appropriate way and time to celebrate is when you are happy in a game of MTG, in the context of like, in the game, the match, like Mason said, if your opponent is like very clearly visibly upset, and it can happen, like especially in the high lever situations, like especially like think of all the things that make it so satisfying to even want to celebrate to the extent that you do. On the other side of the table is likely someone who put in all that effort and felt like they were going to get a taste, and then it all, right, and now they're back where they started. Like, that is it can be a big gut-dropping feeling for some people. And, like, if they're visibly expressing that, maybe give it a courtesy, a few steps away from the table, get to your people and celebrate your people, not, like, right in front of them, and remind them even more so of the thing that they're not, that they wanted that they're not going to get today. That's kind of like a personal thing, but that is just my personal thing, right? Like I wouldn't feel good celebrating that situation, so I don't. I celebrate when, like, be it when I've stepped away from the table and I'm with my friends, or like, just when I feel like what I've done is worth celebration, celebrate it. Like, and when you've done something that you think is worth celebrating, celebrate it. I think there's a discourse that happens like once every year or two or so, but like whatever accomplishment it is that you feel good about and you want to celebrate, you should celebrate without feeling judged for celebrating that. Like, don't be tactless about it, like I was saying, but like if you are just happy that you got a box out of the PTQ side event at like MagicCon, and you like, sure, you missed the day 2 cut, but you got like a box or whatever, and you're just happy with how you played all day, like, yeah, pop off, be happy about that. Plenty of people, myself included, went 0-2 drop in that event, right? Like, if you're happy that you top 8 at that RCQ, pop off. If you're not, like, don't. But also, if someone else is happy for you, and I think this is really the kicker for me that I've had to realize over the last few years, is like, if someone else wants to celebrate what you've done and thinks it's really cool, especially someone who's close to you, like one of your friends thinks like, oh, that's really, really dope, like, give yourself the, like, appreciation to let that in.
I think that's huge. I like you had like that PPQ era where like a win was like I would shrug it off, and I specifically remember a player after a win being like, dude, that's really cool. And I was like, oh, it's just like another PPQ. He's like, oh, I actually haven't won one yet, and I've been trying for a long time. And I remember specifically thinking, like, at that time, like, know what? We often just like take for granted the things that we do and accomplish because we've been there before, right? But like, you know, there's going to be a time where maybe you don't have as much time to play Magic, where you're not as good as you are right now, where you'll hit a slump. Like, PV got silver one year, guys. I know that people say that all the time, but you guys know that PV got silver one year after like 7 years in a row or something of being platinum? Wild. Like, it just happens. And, you know, I think that he probably celebrated pretty hard when he got platinum the next year. So, for me, I think the appropriate times to celebrate are like what Abe said, like when you feel joy, like when you, and you know, I did this thing when we lost competitive Magic, but Game Grid Lehigh, former sponsor, was doing those 1Ks where every time, you know, I would go buy a bottle of champagne and make mimosas with my wife or my roommate, whoever. At the time, I had a lot of people living in my house during the pandemic, but you know, I'd make mimosas, give everybody drinks, and like toast to, you know, making, you know, $300 playing Magic. And I think that really helped me. And it's you to get to decide like when's the appropriate time for you to celebrate. Just do it conscientiously, right? Like, don't like pointing at your opponent and be like, "Ha, sucker," as you like. That's not a celebration. That's taunting. You know, and figure out what's right for you. In the spirit of celebration, I wanted to give everybody a chance to say if there's anything you guys want to say about this episode and about hitting that 500, you know, episodes mark. And Abe, I want to start with you as the new guy. Is there anything you want to say?
You know, considering this is nearly my 150th episode, we're getting close to that.
It might almost be 3 years. It's been so long.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I think it has been just about 3 years. Because, like, I think it's probably 3 years in, like, a couple weeks, if I recall the timeline correctly. But, you know, like, I think it's really, like, a testament to you guys and also just everyone who's been a part of this podcast, how, you know, pervasive Always Improving is and has been, and the fact that that's still the point of the show, and that's something that still resonates with so many listeners of all skill levels. Like, it's, you know, the number one thing where, like, I mean, even me and my girlfriend even joke about it. Like, you know, it's like it's something that you just can't shake and can't stop wanting to engage with. But like, it's unsurprising to me that it's been 500 episodes, considering what it is that's been being put out here, and like to have been a part of it. And have it be such a part of my, you know, routines and day to day and week to week for nearly 3 years now. It's just like,
sorry,
I don't know.
You got to stop making the mistake. Episode 354, that banger episode was February 24th, 2020.
So over 3 years now.
Yeah. Congrats,
yeah.
man.
So yeah, I mean, doing this for 3 years, it much like playing tournament Magic and whatever, it feels like riding a bike at this point. I can come home from work, sit down and jam, and you know, I feel like that really is just how you wind up with a timeless show, is you have a timeless concept and keep plugging away at it, and that's really what I've been privileged to be a part of for the 3 years here. So
I'll go next. So we want to save the best for last. I made a sappy post already because, like, I didn't want to cry on the episode. Probably still I'm going to. I am very grateful. Very grateful for Mason. Just for those who don't know, Mason and I can clash sometimes, and we always get through it because we love each other. And it is very rare to have a love that I have with somebody like Mason, where I can be like mad at him and then talk about it and be okay, like just, I don't know, like 2 hours later. And it gives to show the type of person that Mason is, because I think that I'm a hard person to work with. Like I'm just difficult. So my first thing is thank you to you, and just thank you to the listeners. We have a a chat in our private Discord for the three of us called Good Vibes, where we like just post, messages that, whether you message Mason on MTGO or Abe on Facebook or, wherever you're messaging us, it gets to the group of like, hey, I really love this thing. And dang it, I am going to cry. Sometimes when I'm really sad and thinking about stuff, like I go to that and I read that stuff. And, the stories that some of the listeners have told are just wild. Like absolutely out of this world to think that we could have the impact that we have. And I just thank the listener so much. So, Mason?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the podcast has been a part of my life for like 8 years. So, just over a third of my life has been in some way involved with the podcast. And yeah, it's just like hard to exactly find the words to say about it because it is such a big thing and it doesn't feel like 8 years. And, there've just been like various points at various times where, like podcast's doing great. We gotta get through this, like in the COVID era, and like just a lot of stuff. But I think kind of like what Abe said, like the always improving message sort of being the guiding light and sort of like letting the show know what it is, like there are a lot of shows that I like and I listen to that don't have like that same light. And that just means the show is different sometimes. It also means that you get a different thing from the show, and the show changes and more. So it's not necessarily bad. CC has as well, but it has sort of like, despite what's happened, our goal of like, let's try to be better than we were a month ago and help listeners on that journey has been a through line. And even though like the methodology or like the way we approach it has changed, it hasn't. And just the amount of people that have come to me like, oh, this is really helpful. Will you really help me with this? Or like, oh, I love the show, or like the show has helped me with this or that, is like a truly astonishing thing. And, a lot of people don't realize that like CC is so old, and like 500 episodes is just like a lot of episodes. Spencer was talking to us about how, as far as we know, the only other constructed podcast to get close to this stopped at episode 500. So we're going to be like the longest running one if we can just hold out 7 more days.
I mean, they also started after us, for what it's worth.
Sure,
we're already the longest running.
Sure. Yeah, really shows our dedication to release a weekly episode. No, but, jokes aside, I think that, like, while we have had pitfalls and we've had, really great moments and I think some lower moments, we have tried to always do what's best for the listener and try to prioritize that. And I think that is, like, a big thing to me. And so when we think back on, like, 8 years of this, it's just hard to even find the words to really encapsulate what it means, because it is so much bigger than most things are, and it's so integrated in my life that it's like trying to decouple it or untangle it in order to like talk about it is too hard of a task. It is too much a part of me and my journey in Magic. So
well, I love you guys, and congratulations. Sorry that you guys didn't get champagne, but could have been here. I don't know. My wife says to me, she goes, "Well, it sucks that your co-hosts aren't in Utah anymore because I got cake." And I was like, "Am I supposed to eat a whole cake? What is happening?"
I'd take some cake.
That's going to do it for the main topic. We do have a Patreon question. This one comes from Jacob. You want to become a patron of $5 more, you get access to that. He says, what methods do you suggest to help with reflecting on your paper play? It's really hard to make notes or whatnot after the game unless something has a glaring mistake or is obviously well thought out play. Especially it's something that occurred early in the match, because details get foggy quick. I'm going to go first on this one. I think this is a skill that you have to work on. Certainly something that historically I've been bad at. And one of the ways that I found really helps me is when I'm birding matches to not talk like what specifically. Actually, I'm going to rewind. When I'm birding matches like in a PTQ or an RCQ or whatever, is to maybe like take notes on my phone as I'm watching to talk about my plays after with my friends. Because when you question that, when you have those conversations about their plays, and they do the same with you after the match, it reminds you of these things, and it lets you learn how to take mental note of a thing that might be important or a pivotal moment. And that's something that really helped me, especially during like the PPTQ era. We did that a lot with each other, where like it was like, oh yeah, just write it down. Let's talk about it after the match, and it was really helpful for me. Abe?
I will say there are two actionable things I'd say you can do. One is when you take notes with your life totals, like on paper, you can likely take more notes in the margins of that. So, like, I know there was a player who was a really good legacy player from my area who would play Storm a lot, and he would just mark down like the initials of whatever it was that was changing the life totals. So it'd be like, crack polluted delta, you'd be like -1 PD on like his life total, so he could keep track of like every life total change that happened and why. And I think that if you get in the habit of doing things like that, it makes it easier to remember the details of what happened in your games. If you're like, even on a level of, if you want to get really extreme about it, be like, okay, like turn 5, I took 3 damage in combat from this creature or whatever, right? Like, you could get that extreme just in like logging what happens over the game. I know that I'm very good at reliving a game through looking at the life totals typically, like from a high level, not the cards in my hand. They're pretty hard to remember, like the cards and I thought were in my opponents, things like that. But you can do that, just take more notes, like in simple ways that jog your memory when you look at them again. The other thing I would say is if you're having trouble with reflecting on the game you played and where you might have been able to either play differently or play better, is I would challenge you to say, are you asking your opponent? Because your opponent was just playing the match with you and was also thinking about the match the whole time, and likely is going to be able to help you jog your memory as to where things might have gone wrong, because they were probably thinking about it in terms of where things were going right and vice versa. So, yeah, it's easy to forget that your opponent can be a resource to you, and if you like that you can talk to them after the match, and like even though like you can even talk about the game you just played and talk about how you won, especially if you're just asking that, or like how you lost, you just ask them like, what was your thought process, or what did you choose to do or do, and why. That can help you, or they can help you remember like details of the match for like, oh, what happened in game 1, like I felt like I was ahead and then I started to fall behind. Odds are that they probably know like that it was the turn you spent your last removal spell, and then like, their Murktide region ran away with the game, or whatever it was that happened. So I'd say those are good ways to kind of cut through the fog of the details, is either try to piece things back together or take a bit more clear notes on what happens during the game, so it's easier to remember in more granular detail.
Yeah, I think like having a journal, one of the coaching people I do is I have her write a journal entry, and she like talks up the matches, and then you come back to the later and reflect, because she struggles with that as well. So that's a good one. Everything these guys said, I think is good. If you're wanting to work on just like general stuff too, just like record your local like weekly tournaments that you play. It's gonna be a lot harder to do stuff like RCQs or whatever. But if you're playing like Wednesday Night Magic or whatever, like that is something you can do. It's like really easy to get like a $10 phone tripod. You stick it on there. Most phones these days have good cameras, and you might not have a perfect like setup, but you'll see a lot of what's going on, and that could be a way to like help jog your memory as well.
I've seen people, just to add on to that, I saw like clips that easily sit on the chair, back of the chairs, probably wherever you are. And we had a guy that was streaming his 1K matches playing Belcher, I think it is, in Modern. For the Belcher Discord, he would just stream it to the Discord just with like this phone clip. I thought it was really cool. So
yeah, like that's a great tool and a great resource. So like there's lots of different ways to go about doing it, but those are all good ones. And in general, it's something you have to really work on and try to improve at. But I think those are some things that can generally help you do it. And, like Abe said, like you can talk to your opponent and ask them what they thought, or ask your friends and those sort of things. And I think generally improving paper Magic is so much tougher. And this is part of what I love about MTGO is it records all of your matches. You can go look at your game history, watch your replays. You have that available to you. So, I highly suggest doing that or investing in a camera because reviewing gameplay is really helpful. And think a lot about what you would be doing now, not watching and just being like, oh, that seems right or this seems wrong. Try to think through it. So that'd be my answer.
Well, thank you so much for the question, Jacob. If you want to join the conversation, don't forget to check out the Discord. That's on patreon.com/ccbg. When you sign up for $5 or more, you get a welcome message that gives you a link to that Discord. Super awesome. You can also check out the public Discord. We talk about things this week. We had the passing of the GOAT, Mr. Toriyama. Got to talk about that a little bit. And yeah. You can also leave a YouTube comment. We got a YouTube comment last week congratulating us on this episode to come. And those are always appreciated. And then you can check us out on Twitter at CCMTG, where you can see it retweet things like Mason buying his new pillow. How's your new pillow, Mason?
It's pretty good. I got it from Costco. It's like $20. Nice.
I think both my pillows are from Costco. So
yeah, it's not. I'll say this: the $200-ish pillow was very nice to lay on. And I found out how much it was worth. And
you wanted to buy a
$200
pillow?
Well, I went to this sleep store near my house after I went to Dune, and they had a Tempur-Pedic pillow, and they just had pillows.
As one does after Dune.
That's when Vanessa did, yeah. And I laid on it on their bed or whatever. And I was like, oh, this pillow's really nice, And then I was like, oh, I guess I'll get a couple pillows because I thought they'd be $40 to $70 somewhere in there.
You said
I was willing to spend $40.
You said pillow 3 times now.
Well, I tried pillow and I was going to get pillows at the end.
Okay, but
I test ran one pillow.
Am I crazy right now?
He's just from the South, man.
The company I work for is called Pello. And he keeps saying it, and it's
that's why you're hearing it. Then I'm just hearing him say pillow like Mason does.
All right.
Who's the pillow?
All right.
I will say, Mason, I'm surprised. So sorry, this is not to derail the end of the show.
Yeah,
but one $200 pillow, that falls in line with the I use this every day. I should spend on it.
Yeah, but it wasn't baby, but they do sales on those pillows all the time too, right? So if you're gonna do it. That's my plan. If they do have off sales, so I'll just
Black Friday, that John.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so
just don't feel like you got to live a $20 pillow. Not I'm living a $20 pillow life myself. Yeah. I got to raise my hand and say I got a pillow over Black Friday. That's what I sleep on most of my weekends, and it'll wear out soon.
Do you guys take your pillows on Magic trips?
No.
So if I'm driving, I do. If I'm flying,
I have a seat cushion that I take to every tournament.
I'm sitting on one right now.
Yeah, let's go.
It's the heavy play of sea cushions.
It's the heavy play of sea cushions. If you want to join the conversation, don't forget you can comment. Is Mason saying pillow or pillow? Leave a comment. Let us know. Where can people find you, Mason Clark?
You can find me on Twitter at Mason E. Clark. You can find me at twitch.tv/the Mason Clark. You can find me every other week on TCG Player. I'm writing all about the BNR announcement, including sort of what Modern's changed since then. During the time of this recording, got sent, Rainbow Rhinos for the first prelim. Let's go, Rainbow Rhinos. So it's going to be exciting to see how things turn out there. So I'm writing about that. If you want to get coaching, you can reach out via that same at Mason E. Clark on Twitter or my email, masoneclark@gmail.com. Put coach description, that way I know you're there. And you can always check me out on all the coveragey things that I do, like the NRG in April coming up. Abe, where can people find you?
You can find me over at twitter.com/morenothings. My DMs are also open for coaching. And yeah, I'm still, honestly at this point, more music than Magic on my Twitter. I'm kind of vibing with it. I got a lot of things to say about Magic, but you hear them here. Things about music, you can only really get in one place. I'm willing to say I've got better music taste than most Magic Twitter. So, shots fired.
You can find me at Heezy Game. You can find me every week on Ninja Nerd and every month on Smash Through. Abe, what'd you learn on the show this week?
I learned that it's actually been the full 3 years. 3 years of me being on the show. And that is,
How does that feel?
I don't know. I say it all the time. It's like, I don't know. I started doing the show like, I don't know, a couple months ago. I don't know. Just, yeah, I'm still, it's just a thing I do now. It's like no longer a thing I think about how long I've been doing it. It's just part of my routine.
It's funny. LSV said, like, I think it was a couple weeks ago on LR, they were talking about it. And they're like, LSV is both the new guy, right? The newest co-host, but he has also been the longest running co-host in LR history. And that's like Mason, right? Like Mason's like newer to me than some of my other co-hosts, but like Mason is by far the longest running CCMDG co-host. It's just funny. It's just weird. Time is not real, Abe.
I'm probably not coming for the throne. I'm gonna be honest. That's a lot of time to catch up to Mason.
Well, currently you're just not even catching up.
Did you think you were
running?
Did you think you were going to
together.
do 3 years?
I had no idea how much I was going to do. Honestly, when I came on, I thought I was going to do one episode, and then like maybe a couple more, and then I was doing them all the time from then on.
Mason, what'd you learn this week?
I think about these things a lot differently than a lot of other people. Like you're like, can you believe it or whatever? And to me, it's just like, yeah, CC's just part of my life. You know, like it is what it is in a lot of ways, and like it is like a thing, and it doesn't feel unreal because it is just like a thing. Like Abe said, it's just like a thing that I do. It's part of my routine, and so coupled into me. So it's interesting just to get different life perspectives from different people, you know?
Yeah.
Like that would not even be a thing I would almost even think about asking. But not necessarily wrong, it's just like so different than how I view things.
I think that this week I learned that I need to get back to a little bit more celebration in my Magic life and caring about like those accomplishments that maybe I take for granted right now. And maybe need to rewind and put in perspective kind of, one, how hard the last year was for me, and two, like what that means for me moving forward, and like, hey, like it's okay, like I think about like store championships, right? Like, man, you tell me you won a store championship, oh man, I missed game days. I miss winning a game day. That was dope. I want to win a game day. I don't know.
Now they give you $100 promos.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody so much for listening, and I just thank you so much to you too. This show's not possible without you, and I think Mason undersold how his contribution during the pandemic, for what it's worth, on this episode. I love you guys, and here's to 500 more.
We end the show at 2,000 episodes. See you then. Bye. Later.
That would be so many.